So, grandiose or malignant narcissists often rely on aggressive manipulation tactics to control and dominate others, while vulnerable narcissists typically operate in much more subtle ways that either go unnoticed or seem to always have plausible explanations. I'm Lise Leblanc, therapist, author, and life coach, and in today's video, I'm talking about 7 common subtle manipulation tactics used by covert narcissists. So let's start with their passive-aggressive attitudes and behaviors, which is one of their signature tactics. And the purpose is to express their anger and resentment indirectly while maintaining their nice facade. They may use subtle comments, delay responses, or sabotaging things in a way that makes them seem innocent on the surface, but underneath, they are aimed at creating frustration and punishing you without ever directly confronting the issue or even saying that they're upset. Passive-aggressive comments can sometimes sound supportive, but there's always a cold undercurrent. So even if they have a smile on their face, or their words might not be that bad if you repeated them to someone else, you can feel the resentment, the disappointment, the disgust, and the hostility, but they won't admit to it. Okay, so let's move on to number 2, which is playing the psychologist. When a covert narcissist feels the need to gain more control over you, they will start behaving like your therapist, observing you, carefully pointing out your flaws, analyzing your behavior, and interpreting your motivations. Subtly, they are putting themselves above you and making everything about you. You are the problem. So they are trying to convince you that they have some superior ability to read you, like they know you better than you do. But if you buy into the idea that you're the only problem in the relationship and your failures are the sole cause of their distance and their resentment, then you'll be perpetually spinning your wheels trying to meet their ever-shifting conditions and expectations in order to try to please them. This is what I call conditional future faking. So it's where the narcissist convinces you that the relationship and the future you envisioned depend entirely on you fixing yourself in order to make them happy. They will promise you that if you just listen to them and correct yourself, that you'll get all the rewards that you got at the beginning of the relationship during the love bombing phase, all that affection, attention, and that the perfect future that you once planned is still in reach as long as you fix yourself. But no matter how much you change, the goalposts will always move and you'll always be left chasing an ideal that is never truly attainable. Number 3 is guilt tripping and shaming. Covert narcissists are masters at using guilt and shame to manipulate others into serving them and giving them what they want. For example, let's say a narcissist asks you to help them with something, but you can't for whatever reason. Instead of accepting that you can't help, they will subtly make you feel like you're letting them down in a major way. They might say things like, "I've always been there for you. I just thought you'd be able to do this one little thing for me," making it seem like it's a huge betrayal on your part. They'll constantly test your limits by making you feel like you owe them something. And if you push back or assert your boundaries, they'll escalate their manipulation, shifting from guilt tripping to outright shaming. And they will use your desire to stay consistent with who you believe yourself to be to control you. For instance, if you see yourself as a good, honest, empathetic person, they will pressure you to prove this to them time and time again. They'll push you to show how good and empathetic you are by always putting their needs first, no matter the cost to you. But the more you give in, the more they'll demand. To them, your desire to be a good person becomes the leash that they use to control you. Over time, their constant testing and shaming will erode your self-esteem, leaving you feeling like you're always in the wrong. You'll find yourself constantly trying to fix things, trying to prove your worth, while they take no responsibility, show no respect, and have no accountability for their actions. Number 4 is strategic empathy and bogus apologies. Covert narcissists create the illusion of being understanding and caring, but often this is just a way to gain your trust, to look good in public, to shift the conversation back to themselves, or to get personal information from you that they will later use to manipulate you. For example, let's say you get home after a tough day at work. You had a conflict with a colleague and you tell your narcissistic wife about it. And she acts like she cares, she listens, she might say all the right things. But later on, when you're in a conflict with her, she might bring up this issue that you had at work, using it as evidence that you're the problem and using it to discredit you. Along the same lines, covert narcissists will sometimes pretend to be remorseful or to apologize, but their apologies are usually insincere and calculated. So this kind of apology is not really about genuine remorse. It's about minimizing their own actions and shifting the blame back onto you, making you feel like you're the problem. So their remorse and empathy are usually manipulation tactics to maintain control over the narrative and keep you emotionally off balance, allowing them to continue their behavior without facing any real consequences. Here's an example. Let's say you caught your narcissistic wife texting another man, having an online affair essentially. Instead of taking accountability for her behavior, she says, "I'm sorry, but at least I never met up with him." Or, "I'm sorry, but you're never around to support me." So their apology is really about minimizing their behavior and putting the blame back onto you. So it deflects from the real issue, minimizes their actions, and manipulates you into feeling like you should accept the bare minimum of acknowledgement, leaving you with the feeling that you should be grateful for their BS apology. Now remember, people can act in these ways on occasion and not be a full-blown narcissist. But if the person truly cannot give a genuine apology ever, or admit that they've done something wrong without deflecting or projecting, always letting themselves off the hook while blaming and invalidating others, it is a huge red flag. Number 5 is stonewalling. Stonewalling is a form of emotional manipulation or avoidance where one person refuses to engage in a conversation or provide any meaningful response. Stonewalling can include ignoring, leaving the room, giving one-word responses, changing the subject, using sarcasm. Now, it's important to note that victims of narcissistic abuse often resort to stonewalling as a form of self-protection. After trying everything to communicate and resolve issues, they give up, they shut down. But where a narcissist uses stonewalling as a way to manipulate people and control situations, for victims of narcissistic abuse, it's not a power move. It's really about giving up and about emotional survival because they've learned over time and many interactions that engaging with the narcissist only leads to more conflict and drama. At first, you might try to argue with them to help them see how their behavior is affecting you. And you may do this in the context of taking responsibility and communicating in respectful ways. But as time goes on, you'll start avoiding these conversations and you'll start trying to protect yourself from the emotional exhaustion and manipulation. In the case of a female covert narcissist, once you start disengaging from the drama and setting emotional boundaries, you'll be accused of not having any emotional capacity, not being able to hold space, and they will make you feel guilty and inadequate for not providing them with the emotional support they need while they simultaneously belittle your emotional needs and really don't support you in any way. Number 6 are implied threats. So they may use vague language to create uncertainty and leaving you feeling confused and anxious about their intentions. For example, let's say you constantly bend over backwards to meet your narcissistic wife's needs. Instead of appreciating the value you bring to the relationship, she implies that you're not doing enough and that there are hundreds of men waiting to scoop her up, while implying that no other woman on earth would ever be interested in you. So she might say something like, "You're lucky I'm still here because no one else would tolerate the things I'm putting up with." Or, "You're not exactly the type of man most women would want to be with." Or, "I could easily find someone who truly appreciates me and can give me what I need." Meanwhile, you're doing so much for her and getting very little in return. Number 7 is the use of intermittent reinforcement to manipulate and control you. And this tactic, in my opinion, is the most dangerous of all because it hijacks your brain's reward pathways. So first, a narcissist will give you a lot of praise, constant affection, attentions, and emotional validation. Rewards are given freely and consistently in the beginning during the love bombing phase, and this floods your brain with dopamine and other feel-good hormones, as well as pain relief chemicals. But over time, this will give them the power over your experience of both pleasure and pain as you begin to associate their affection and praise with emotional highs, while their withdrawals or criticism triggers emotional lows. This unpredictable cycle makes it very hard to break free because your brain becomes conditioned to crave their approval in order to feel good. And so you're always trying to chase that emotional high that you felt in the beginning and to avoid their punishments. This creates an emotional roller coaster where you're constantly questioning whether things are truly as bad as they appear to be, or if it's just a temporary dip. And you just get more and more confused and addicted to them, despite the reality that the relationship is only getting worse and robbing you of any self-respect, self-confidence, and self-esteem that you may once have had. If you're struggling to recover from a narcissistic relationship, please consider reaching out to a therapist in your area who specializes in narcissistic abuse, and consider my online recovery programs that I linked in the description section of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and if you're interested in learning exactly how a covert narcissist hijacks your reward pathways, please click on the link above.